Hello, my friends. I'm Rick, and this is your seat at the table, and we are looking at Monster Manual 3 for 3.0, 3.5, whatever. And I will keep telling you until we stop doing these videos. I don't give a damn if it's 3.5 or 3.0. It's the same edition. It really is. This was produced in 2004, which would make it officially a 3.0 version. But as far as I'm concerned, they're part of the same damn thing. And traditionally, it's just another whole slew of new monsters and things for you to throw at your players. Um, there's also some things in here like templates for monster feats, glossary, include templates for living spells, spell work creatures, void mind creatures, and woodlings, animal companions, or mounts, some additional ones down here. We're not going to try to go through every bloody thing, but we're going to run into a couple that I've had some fun with over the years. One of them being is the boneclaw. One of the things I always found them about them being creepy is it's kind of like this stalker that comes out of the dark mist at the dark times, the hardest parts of the night, and so on and so forth. And what made them so creepier was the fact that they could extend one of these claws of theirs up to 20 feet and hook you with them. And I thought, geez, that's just something you want to get the drop on. So these are a large undead. The base reach is 10 to 20 feet. Yes, Boneclaw likes to get the drop on its enemies, especially when the foes are still at range, surprising with an attack of opportunity by extending its claws as its enemies close to range. I forget what the reason was, but I had a character that cheesed off somebody, got a curse or something, and would have one of these things pop up every now and then and just come out of left field, coming for him, and get in the way and cause other issues. The party got to be pretty savvy at defeating these things after a while, so it's just kind of the way it plays out. Yes, and then we got Gray and White Mama back up here in my face again. See how long that lasts. I had to move her off the table because I can't show you the book and deal with her literally being in my face the whole time at the same time. It just has its problems too. So we get into dinosaurs, right? Uh, the Dracatar. The Dracatar Society, these things in some ways are like lizard people on steroids, or there's a number of dragon-based genres or subgenomes, if you will, of races and things like that have cropped up over the decades in various supplements for D&D. One of the things I loved about these guys is they're bloody tanks. They're really, really powerful individuals and can be really a challenge for even a good solid group of players, and they're extremely violent beasts. And I have used these as allies and as security. So if you get a wise enough or smart enough or old enough uh, red dragon, for example, or dragon, chromatic dragon of any sort. These things wanted to make great guardians for the lairs and minions. They also make shock troops for, like I said, for just about any lizard-based whatever. And so I've used them numerous times in various campaigns to great success. And I recommend, getting developed. There's such a thing as just randomly pulling stuff out of monster manuals and not really giving any rhyme or reason as to why they showed up. That's one of the prime reasons that people over time become less enamored with random encounters, because it's literally just random whatever showing up, and it doesn't always make sense, and it just gets to be a little frustrating. But if you can pop these things in that make value and use them real well. The kinku, for example, the first time I ever used the kinku to any length of effort was that the two dwarves in a wagon session that I ran for a number of years for a couple of friends, and they ran into a pair of or not a pair, but they ran into an unconscious kinku laying in the middle of the road, and Osborne debated about just driving past it, leaving it there, but Kenny wasn't having it. So they went down to try to help it out. And they end up with this bird NPC for a while that really was kind of frustrating on some aspects. especially since it was a known. It kept stealing stuff wherever they went, and they eventually they had to part ways with it. But what they didn't realize is that it was also part of a bigger group, and that the other group was the bigger part of the group was looking for it, and so I had them continue popping in and out during that entire campaign. And the guys had mixed opinions on it, but they knew how to deal with them. The more they play them against them, the more they get into them. All right, so we get into this lizard scale or lizard folk, the black scale variation, and the poison dusk variation. Once again, I'm a fan of lizard humanoid bases. Obviously, kobolds being a number one, but lizard folk come in there too, and there's something pure about them. You know how they're going to react in 90% of the scenarios. They're pretty straightforward to run, but they're not overly complicated, and that's always a good thing as far as I'm concerned. What I like was having additional variety. So just the random run-of-the-mill lizard folk, and then we can toss in some uber lizard folk to bolster their ranks and give them some more muscle and things like this. And there was some challenges in doing that, but it wasn't all that. As far as I'm concerned, it came off pretty easy. Another thing that I run into that I find is a challenge, these are called petals, tiny fang. And overall, they're pretty much not much more than a nuisance at best. They're not any real threats to any of the players. But what I did is I had this colony of these things in this glade that are once again our two dwarves in the wagon were passing through, and they had a bad earlier part of the day, so they weren't into that great a mood when they rolled through the valley, the glade where these petals live, and they failed their saves and come to basically laid out in the grass, surrounded by flowers, flowers in their beards, flowers in their hair, with their clothes mostly removed and cleaned and neatly stacked nearby. And Osborne lost his marbles over it. He really was not happy with that. Mostly because these little things became very I don't know. They kind of I don't want to say I don't want to say they admired them or revered them so much, but they ended up developing a kind of a weird rapport with these things because they come back on their next rotation when they come back around the area and discovered that the glade had been partially destroyed by something, and they were being harassed by I forget what it was that was harassing them, and they come looking for the two dwarves, and Osborne didn't want anything to do with him, and Kenny kind of forced the issue on us. They had to turn around, and go back, and save the little village or the little glade and a bunch of other stuff, and this earned them some undying whatever. And I remember, I don't think I was always going to intend to have them go back a third time, but it didn't quite pan out that way, right? Then in a different campaign, I ran into the red caps, and these were just really interesting. Mostly because I had a player who was an arrogant twit who just really would go out of their way to antagonize stuff. And he also had this bad habit of pilfering things that weren't his, and because he thought it was funny. So I had him pilfer this thing's sigh, and this just ended up having this never-ending rotation of red caps that keep popping up and coming after him because they wanted this damn thing back. And these things are brutally vicious. They really are. I made a mistake the first encounter, and I had too many of them available, and they just about cleaned the player's group's clock. I mean, for a moment there, I was thinking maybe I'd overestimated the abilities of the group. They managed to pull a rabbit out of their butt and survive, but it was a near miss. There was two characters that were on their way out before they got away from the conflict. And then after that, I toned down how many of these things they would run into on a regular basis when they did run into them. The main thing is that these red caps are very vindictive. They will chase you down. They will follow you, and they're murderous little creatures. They love to soak their hat in your blood. That's why they're called the red cap in the first place. But the idea being is finding these creatures and other possible scenario stuff out here and using them creatively. Topiary Guardians, for example, I found these to be quite brilliant, and actually I carried these over into several other game franchises that I've used over the years because the idea makes perfectly good sense. And if you've been to any fancy gardens where the people make the effort to do topiary uh, uh, um, uh, renditions of living creatures, they're quite interesting. So to find something like this that you could put in a noble's garden, for example, that actually serves a dual role as both security and as a aesthetic, it's a win-win, right? I mean, you can't you just want to look at these things creatively and from a different perspective. Now, it's another thing that I point out to players of different genres that I've been a big fan of. When you go to sci-fi, science fiction, Star Wars, for example, any science fiction game, finding and creating exotic creatures and aliens is a challenge, no different than anything else. But having these massive tomes of pre-created villains and bad guys and others, it just makes a natural conduit for finding these things and tapping them and just changing them slightly so they fit your alien environment or your alien world. And you don't have to go to, out of great lengths to really rebuild the wheel, if you will. Let's see, Warforged. I had a player who wanted to be Warforged, and it took me a while for him to get me on board with it because all I could think was these overpowered, just monster mashing machines, and in a way, that played out that way. Then there was a novel that was written for the Forgotten Realms setting, and there was this fella in there that was kind of half Warforged or half golem and half living being, and he was him and his party were dragon hunters or something. I forget what it was, but after read the character development and the guy's story arc, and I started seeing the possibilities, and I leaned up a little bit for my friend, and I said, "Yeah, okay, let's see what we can go and what you can do with them," and ran off with it. It was something else, yeah. As characters here, uh, always nice to experiment sometimes with things we're not familiar with and things that we always want to do. Anyway, so Monster Mountain 2, this is a really good book. I got this secondhand. Originally it was 35 bucks. I got it for 18. This is for the D20 system. So somebody can make the argument, well, this is 3.5. And I made that same argument, and somebody else cried at me and said, well, it was produced before this date, so it can't be a 3.5. Yet it's part of the D20 system. So I don't know. Anyway, I'm not doing so hot. I'm sorry if my video is a little lackluster this weekend, but like I said, I've been fighting a cold all week. My voice is coming and going. I've got a few things. I think I got enough here to get me through the next weekend anyway. That's the goal, right? And of course, Green White Mama here's not helping all by parking her butt on front of everything. Anyway, till next week, I'm Rick. Hope you guys have a great